Each day, 6,000 Americans search the National Marrow Donation Program, hoping for a perfect match. Tonight on Cox Forum, you're going to hear about some of the life-saving treatments that come from marrow and organ donations. You're also going to hear about the courageous story of a young boy's fight against a fatal genetic disease and how that led to another young boy having his life saved. That's all coming up tonight on Cox Forum. The gift of life is indeed within reach, and you can help people reach it. You're going to find out how right after we hear about the OC&2 with Rob Whitfield. We'll be telling you about how some 20,000 Californians are waiting for an organ donation right now and how you can help them. We're going to find out about that right after this, so don't go away. Tonight on Cox Forum, we're going to talk about how you can give the gift of life. In our first segment, we have with us Gina Cousineau, who is going to be telling us about her son and her family and what they have been doing for more than a year now. And I guess, you know, as I mentioned in the beginning of the program, we're talking about the battle that your son faced against a genetic disease that proved to be fatal. We're going to go through that whole process. It began, I guess, a bit more than a year ago when Evan began having seizures. Tell us about how that all came about.
Okay, well, you know, we've been in Orange County for 25 years now, and we were a typical happy, healthy family with 4 kids, all athletes. Evan had a seizure after swim practice on April 30th, and we ended up at Mission Hospital and didn't know the degree of what was going on with him. Ended up at CHOC, transported in the middle of the night. And on May 1st, they said to us that our son had a metabolic genetic disease called adrenoleukodystrophy, that he had 6 to 12 months to live, there was no treatment, no cure, and that it would be a horrific death. Now you can imagine going to bed with that information.
I can't imagine going to bed with that information, especially when a day earlier he was
romping around doing his thing, yes.
So what happened? What do you do in a situation like that?
Well, on May 2nd, they came to us and said, well, you may want to consider going to the University of Minnesota, where they're treating these late diagnosed ALD boys with bone marrow transplant. And from that moment on, we had hope. And that's where we went. We went a week later, we were in Minnesota. We consulted with the doctors there, came home knowing transplant was an option, and the first place they went to look was to his siblings. 4 children, chances of finding a match within the children 30%, so we figured we had a good option. Evan did not have a match between his siblings. We do know Evan's twin sister Elena and his brother Derek are matches for each other, something I hope to God I never need to know, but we didn't have a match. So immediately they had to go to the cord blood registry because Evan's disease was progressing so quickly. We needed to do something immediately. And cord blood, as you can imagine, is frozen, so it's readily available. You're not waiting for a donor to see if they're healthy, if they're a match, you know, what their availability is.
What is cord blood?
So cord blood, when a baby is born, people have the option of banking their cord blood privately for their own use or publicly. So they immediately went to the cord blood registry. It's in the umbilical cord blood, so when somebody decides to bank their cord blood, the doctor simply pours it into a vial. It is sent off to the cord blood banks and frozen for people like us when they look for tissue typing.
So what would they do with the blood? They would put it in your son? Or-
Yes,
okay.
exactly. People always wonder what's involved there, and I've seen many shows on TV that portray absolutely false information. What happens is we found out Evan had a double cord match. We were in Minnesota. 10 days he had chemo and radiation to basically kill his immune system. On June 27th, we laid in his hospital room. He had a blood transfusion twice. 2 cords, just like a blood transfusion, went into his body and infused life into him. And within weeks, he had fully engrafted, meaning that those 2 cords, and we knew they were 2 little girls, had taken over his immune system and had halted the disease. So it was extremely exciting to know that. At that point in time, he had already lost his hearing. He had lost most of his vision, but he was very cognitive, able to talk to us. We were able to teach him through sign language and through pictures, and we knew at that point in time that we were going to be able to give him a good start in life and that we were going to make him a vibrant person still.
What are the doctors saying during this whole procedure? I mean, they started off by telling you there was no hope. And now all of a sudden you have this glimmer out there. How do doctors deal with that sort of thing with you folks in the family?
Well, I'll tell you, their biggest comment on a daily basis was, we just don't know. So we encountered lots of we just don't knows. And what we learned was with the doctors, you know, this is so specific to your disease and to your illness, and really they don't know so much. But my God, they are trying like you couldn't imagine to do what they can for the kids with leukemias and lymphomas and really patients across the world with different diseases. So they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know if you're going to engraft. They don't know if the protocol they're using is correct. They don't really know, but they're working towards making it perfect. And for Evan, it worked.
It worked for
a period of time. So what happened to us was 2 months after being in the hospital, we got released to go to the Ronald McDonald House in Minnesota, and we were thrilled. 2 days later, he got a fever, which is very typical of post-transplant patients because their immune systems are compromised. And typically you're there for a few days fighting that. For Evan, he had contracted the adenovirus, and for somebody like you and me, very common upper respiratory, gastrointestinal issues. For somebody who's immune compromised, for Evan, it took his life. And it took a while. November 2nd, we lost him in Minnesota, the day before his and Elena's 10th birthday. And you know, if your son's death could be phenomenally beautiful, it was. It was wonderful, it was beautiful, it was peaceful, we were all together. And if you have to do it, we did it right.
So what got him was not ALD then?
Exactly.
So the fact is that this transplant really did work?
Yes, it did.
What's fascinating is, you know, this is really the first I've heard about the possibility of cord blood. I never was presented to us at all, you know, when we were having our kids.
Exactly. Well, you know, 10 years ago, I did bank Elena and Evan's cord blood. I wasn't aware of anything more than I knew I was paranoid, and now we can figure out why this mother's intuition knew it. But we did bank their cord blood. Unfortunately, Evan's cord blood was tainted, so it's not usable because he has the ALD in his genetic makeup, and Elena wasn't his match. So that threw us into the cord blood registry.
Talk about your new perspective and talk about your 45th birthday.
Okay. Well, you know, when we went to Minnesota, we were on the Fight for Evan Stop ALD campaign. When I came home without Evan, I didn't know what campaign I was on. And that's when I knew I had to do something special. And I knew that I had to save lives in his honor. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but as time went on, it all came to fruition in the fact that I knew that I had to bring new people to the bone marrow registry because without donors, we had no hope. And I knew without blood donation, he would never have lived because all of those transfusions kept him alive. And so, you know, one of the first drives we did was my 45th birthday. I thought, I have no desire to celebrate, but you know what, I'm going to honor Evan. And we had a big drive right outside our house. The Red Cross Bloodmobile was out front, and we brought 45 donors to the registry and 26 pints of blood, and we did an amazing job.
Obviously, Evan's story did not end on November 2nd. We're going to hear about more of it and how it led to the saving of another boy's life right after this.